Dodge this.
Hello my friends, it's AJ back with the Mighty Glue Stick. It's the weekend and it's time for another monster video. As promised, this is, well, I'm going to be talking about something that's pure evil. Oh, sorry. Pure evil. And that is the Eye Tyrant, or the Beholder. Now the Beholder, harkens back to the very first editions of Dungeons and Dragons, and it was basically a big floating ball with a central eye and lots of eye stalks that could shoot beams of magical energy. It's gone through many iterations, but has basically remained true to that one form, and its mode of operation has pretty much stayed the same. There was a slight divergence in, I think it was 4th edition, where I was talking, was it 3.5? Where, no, 4th edition, where it ate magical items and had a collection of this magical residue called residuum inside itself, which made it kind of an interesting target for people to kill and take the residuum and use it for magical means or sell it to alchemists and stuff. But it's 5th edition now, and we've basically gone back to the roots of it just being a nasty bad guy. Now there is a massive body of all sorts of different modules and adventures and things like that featuring beholders. They make really good linchpin bad guys. They're very larger-than-life personalities. They talk, they megalomaniacal, and yeah, love to lord it over everything. And they're also highly xenophobic, and they are loads of fun to play as a dungeon master. So you'll see that in personality, if any of you are familiar with Doctor Who, the BBC drama sci-fi, which has been going for just forever, Daleks in Doctor Who are exactly the sort of personality type that the beholders have. They are extremely xenophobic, psychotic sociopaths, and unlike Daleks that band together and believe in total racial purity, the beholder sort of takes it one step further and only believes in self-purity, with even other beholders falling short of its self-perfection. So they are completely narcissistic as well. Just like a wonderful combination of personality traits. Now, as a monster, they have challenge rating 13. Now, that's pretty tough. So you're really going to be introducing beholders as the bad guy at the end of the train of so you've infiltrated the city and gone through the Thieves Guild, and it all sort of leads towards the Beholder Tyrant at the head of the table of all these different cults and stuff. Or you have gone into the deep recesses of the Underdark and you've come across the lair of beholders, or yeah, you just encounter them as you're traversing through the plains, or you've got a magical item or something like that that the beholder covets and it has come after you personally, or you've stumbled upon their plot, thwarted something that they intended to do. They've sent a bunch of mooks up against you and they failed, and it's come after you personally. Now, probably the worst thing that you could do is stumble into a beholder's lair. First and foremost, it's an alien environment, because the beholder is it's an aberration. It's from the far realm. Now, I know I've talked about the far realm before, but in the case of the beholder, it's kind of interesting that the beholder is perfectly adapted to the far realm in that it is a magical entity. It's got its own source of locomotion and that it can propel itself around by means of hovering. The means that it uses to hover isn't important. The fact is that it can propel itself through any sort of environmental conditions and just move. It's technically, I don't know whether they do really need to breathe or eat, but they do. And they do breathe and they do eat when they're in the prime material plane, but perhaps they don't when they're in other planes of existence. They use some other magical means of sustaining themselves. They're very self-sufficient. They prefer to live alone. And they have amazing abilities to perceive their environment. And look, you can imagine that since the far realm consists of many different physical laws or physical conditions, so up may be down, there may be no sense of gravity whatsoever, it may be a personal gravity like limbo, it can be completely morphic and set with your will, it could be a kaleidoscope of different time periods or physical conditions which you move through. Instead of moving through space, you move through physical laws or moments in time, that sort of stuff. And beholders are adapted to move through that sort of environment. So as weird and as wonderful as the conditions get, beholders are never rattled by changes in their environment. Just doesn't happen. They just adapt to anything that the reality throws at them, even the unreal. So they can gaze into the far realm without going crazy. You can throw any sort of illusion at them or anything like that, and they will just carry on in their own set, whatever they decide to do, they're going to do it no matter what gets thrown at them. They have ultimate focus, which is ironic with that big central eye. Anyway, so yeah, their environment is madness. To them, the prime material plane is frozen. Everything is frozen. Nothing moves. Nothing changes of its own accord. Everything is non-vital. So it would be like us going to a dimension of stone. Everything is boring and mundane. To them, they're used to an environment where everything is alive and moving and vital to a crazy degree. So yeah, the far realm is a really scary place for us, but for a beholder, it's just, it's used to that sort of thing. Why do they live on the material plane? Because there are powers which they've gained through just sort of natural selection and being able to survive all these different conditions in the far realm, all the different dimensions, allow them to lord it over lesser creatures. Basically, on the prime material plane, they are super powerful conduits of magical energy. They are tapped into rifts in time and space. They can rip apart time and space inside their bodies and vent primal powers through their eye stalks. So for them, they are constantly plugged into a warp in space-time. They are a focal point of warp in space-time that can power out energy without taking energy in. So they are a contradiction in the laws of nature. The conservation of energy does not apply to a beholder. So if they tap into a large enough conduit of power, they can pump out an almost unlimited amount of magical force, perhaps only limited by the constraints of their physical body. Anyway, so from their central eye, they create an anti-magical cone. And you can imagine that perhaps it's not so much anti-magic, it's feeding on all mystical energies within their field of sight. So it never shuts off when they have their eye open, because they're actually drawing in all aberrant physical laws and all the sort of energies, ambient energies around them that they can see with this large central eye. So when you cast a spell, you are just feeding the beholder, and it's incredibly powerful. So it's a 150-foot cone, so over in a massive area that this thing can see. Spells and things will just fizzle. Now, the bite of a beholder is pretty fearsome. It does 14 piercing damage, but that's nothing compared to what its eye stalks can do. And it's got, typically it's got at least 10 or 12 eye stalks, usually 10. But the physical forms of the beholder changes quite a lot between them. Some of them have sort of insectoid eye stalks, some of them have just nubs on their heads and things like that. And it's one of the more fun creatures to play with as Dungeon Master, because you can throw variant types of beholders at people all the time, and they should just basically come to expect it. There is no standard model of a beholder, they're all slightly weird. Now, so they've got charm rays, paralyzing rays, fear, slowing rays, innovation, where they basically cause necrotic damage by making something speed up and decay. Telekinesis, which is really, really fun to play with. They've got sleep, petrification, the ever so famous disintegration, and you can also throw other things at them as well. Now, the natural lair of a beholder is areas which are very rich in the unstable energies of the far realm, where the barriers between the dimensions are wafer thin. You can imagine that horrors from the far realm are just like trying to break in from every side. And it's not so much coming in from their walls, they're coming in through any sort of thing they can. So even your thoughts, if you go to a dark train of thought, they will start to crawl into your thoughts and take over. So it's a really, really creepy environment. And the beholders have various lair actions which allow them to take advantage of this. So they can cause like 50-foot squares of ground within 120 feet to become slimy and sticky, that they change the actual texture of things around them by destabilizing the material. They can cause their eyes to transect space and pop up from another direction, from another distance, because they are actually traveling between dimensional folds and skipping the intervening space. So they are literally just looking out through another point in space-time as if it's right here, right next door, because that's something they can do. For them, traveling between dimensions is a natural mode of movement, and they can do it at will. If you wanted to give them some means of teleporting, by all means go for it, but make it something which is reliant on something in the environment that the player characters can destroy to stop them being able to do that. Also, you give them some sort of technology or pets or minions or something like that that the players basically are hampered by, while giving the Eye Tyrant as much mobility as they can right at the start of combat, so they can better use those eye rays and things without being locked down in hand-to-hand combat, which is a weakness of theirs. They are supremely powerful ranged controllers and blast cannons. You know, they make sorcerers and warlocks look like chumps. So yeah, they warp the very environment around them. So when a beholder sleeps, it inflicts nightmares on people. This is a very Cthulhu thing, and you'll see all sorts of references in Gary Gygax's Aberrations in the Far Realm with tentacles and eyes and morphic things that have biting claws and mouths and things like that. And the beholders follow that design concept perfectly. They're basically a floating ball, huge jagged maw, that eerie central eye, and those tentacular eye stalks that can see in all sorts of different directions. Usually they'll have four focused around where their central eye is looking, and the others will be looking in all different directions, so they're extremely hard to sneak up on, if not impossible. Yeah, but those eye rays are incredibly powerful. They use their disintegration beam to hollow out material around them to form their own basic layers or hives. And typically they'll do it so that it's perfectly suited to their mode of operation, which is hovering. And so they don't have stairs or anything like that. They'll just have a hole in the roof, hollow out a donut-shaped area. So you can't trust the floor because they don't use it. So they'll put pit traps and stuff wherever they want. And they'll have all of their objects and things will be guarded and warded by glyphs and things like that, because as soon as they look at a glyph, it's deactivated. As soon as anybody else looks at it, they're in big trouble. So that's something they can do quite frequently. They are very intelligent. They've got an intelligence of 17, so they're quite capable of learning magic. enhancing and studying mystical arts, and they could have psychic powers for sure. Psychic influence and things like that has a very strong undertone in the Beholder, and it's something that I think that will be expanded upon in future additions to the 5th edition psionic stuff. So yeah, it's a very exciting time. I'm seeing how that all sort of plays out. You can see that in the way that if the Beholder sleeps, other people have nightmares, and that ability to travel around and enhance their movement and stuff. That's a very psychic power sort of thing to do. And basically they're a large floating brain, so there you go. So as for the society of Beholders, Beholders are generally aware of each other's existence, and they have a fierce rivalry between each other. They may even counter and override any aggression that they have against other species around them. So when two Beholders lock eye rays, so to speak, everything else is put to the wayside, and they will focus solely on beating what they see as the greatest threat, because they are the greatest living things. They're the only real threat to their existence, and they really, really, really don't like pretender Beholders stepping on their coattails. As for other variants of the Beholders, there's been many. So there's Eye Tyrants being the main things, like a master Beholder that really ramps up its dominance. You got the Death Tyrant, which is basically a Beholder which has channeled so much negative energy that it suffuses them and takes over from the arcane sort of sources. So no longer do they channel electricity and arcane powers or the ability to warp reality. They just focus solely on pumping out negative energy to the point where it's what they subsist on. They no longer need anything else, and they become Death Tyrants because they just shed any semblance of a living form to become a node of negative energy. So in a way, they are undead. I mean, they are undead, but they're basically a Beholder lich without need of a phylactery. So it is a kind of a weakness in that regard, because if you kill one, they won't come back. But on the other hand, boy, they're really potent, because they preserve all of those powers that they had in life. And they tend to focus on creating a plague of undead around them. So they've got the ability to, basically generate undead creatures. So they will quickly kill everyone and raise them up as an undead horde. So you're never going to encounter a Death Tyrant basically by itself unless it's just come into existence, in which case it'll be reveling in its ability to kill everything that it sees, and will be itching to turn everyone that it's killed into a zombie horde. Or you're going to encounter them at the heart of an incursion of zombies and other undead creatures, which will flock to that potent source of negative energy. I mean, for them, the Death Tyrant is a blazing hearth of nice, warm, jubbly, negative energy. It's just a font. Also, any creature that is attracted to arcane powers or primal energies is also going to be attracted to a Beholder and willingly pledge its service to them. So you'll have basically creatures of primal forces and primal chaos and things like Slard and other sort of creatures, which will hang around and be toadies of Beholders, because Beholders, like I say, just pump out huge amounts of energy that they can feed on parasitically. Of course, the Beholders have no need of underlings and will treat them extremely badly unless they're getting exactly what they want. Beholders themselves, they are gluttons, they are avaricious, they are every sort of negative aspect of a personality you can think of. They have all sorts of character and personality flaws. They have a lot of neuroses and things like that. They're extremely paranoid, and they make life very interesting and slightly miserable for everyone around them. They are very dangerous. I mean, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And this thing, by its very nature, is a conduit of power. So yeah, they're an unstable fuse ready to go off any minute, and they are driven by emotions that are purely primal, like a raging tantrum of a toddler. Right, that's about it really for the Beholder. I suggest look at their eye rays and study them carefully before you are using these things in combat. Don't basically just open up on the page and then keep referring to it as during combat, because that will slow everyone down and bore them. What you want to do is design the environment around them so that they can use their eye ray powers not only against the player characters, but also on the environment in a series of triggers or set off sort of environmental effects. So use their petrification beam to take out a support of a large boulder that will fall and roll across and block movement and cause people to move out of the way. Otherwise they're going to hunker down and try and sling it out with behind cover from this thing. So have it use that disintegration beam to destroy cover and make people move. Use its paralysis beam to basically knock out spellcasters or particularly rogues and reduce their mobility. That will target them immediately. It's not stupid, it will fight very, very tactically, and you can guarantee, since these things effectively are immortal, they don't really have an end of their lifespan. They could be thousands of years old and have fought many, many groups of adventurers before. So not only are they potent physically, but also their skills in combat are supreme. They will use charm to great effect to turn defenders and things like that which are coming up one-on-one against them, and just basically turn them around and march them off to go and do something else. So they'll get rid of the damage soakers and the tanks straight away. They will use fear to attack spellcasters and things like that to cause them to run out of the area. To end any area effects which may be affecting them. Something that limits their mobility will have them immediately turn on the spellcaster and stop them in their tracks, or clerics and things like that. If the cleric is healing up people or it's calling upon its god to bring down, wrath and fire upon it, it will very quickly use telekinesis or something like that to throw objects in the thing's way. Anything that requires on line of sight will have sheets and tapestries and things which can throw over people to block their line of sight. Just use its powers strategically, not just as a blast cannon, but also because these powers that it uses are its limbs. Its telekinesis and all of those sort of other powers are as much a sense of manipulating its environment as our hands or eyes or nose or our sights or hearing, that sort of thing. So it uses all of those abilities naturally, and it will use them wisely. So yeah, pay attention to those legendary actions, and have the beholder move around cleverly within its environment. And if it's stuck out in the open, have it create all sorts of tunnels and things like that it can pop into. So if it's on a street or something like that out in the open, use its disintegration ray to blast a hole in the ground and go into a sewer pretty much straight away, or it will shoot way up into the air and stay out of missile range and things like that, while at the same time using telekinesis or something like that, or some other magical effect to cause problems for anything down on the ground below. Yeah. Natural enemies to the beholder is pretty much anything. Anything from the prime material world really is not a fan of beholders in the long run. Lots of creatures, of course, of chaos and destruction will covet the effect that beholder has on the material world, but they are not the fan. They are not have any fans in gods or angelic beings or any of the forces of order, who will seek to rid the universe of any beholders that have have influxed into the prime material plane in an unwanted way. They are like the rats burrowing through the borders between the planes. They're constantly getting squashed by the divine forces who are trying to keep the far realm at bay and keep the prime material clean and clear of any of that chaotic change and disorder. So yeah, beholders, very potent, very cool. One of the most fearsome creatures in Dungeons and Dragons. One of the most iconic creatures in Dungeons and Dragons. On the cover of the monster manual, because they're so incredibly powerful. One of the most iconic creatures in the Waterdeep setting, because this guy here is the leader of the Thieves Guild of Waterdeep, or one of the Thieves Guild. So yeah, very, very important, and definitely something that you should throw against your players at least once in their gaming career. And if you haven't fought a beholder before, Oh boy, the first time you do is going to be one of the most memorable because you'll be quaking in your boots and be like, oh shit, the beholder, oh, run for your lives, please. So yeah, enjoy. I'll see you next week.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank you all for coming today. It's been terrible weather out, so it's good to see a full turnout. So right, let's get on with summoning a demon. Oops. It's okay. He's bound. He can't do anything. But excuse me. You're not who we wanted.
Oh, that's okay. I get wrong numbers all the time.
So, what are you?
I'm a spectator. Do you mind if I watch?
I suppose.
Maybe my sister.
Hello! Take a seat on the pews and we'll try again. Jeffrey, are you sure you brought the right book? Don't. Got it. Okay, here it is. Jeffrey, that's 50 Shades of Fae. Right, from the top then. Hello, my name's Georgina. And as soon as I'm not bound to this circle, I'm going to eat you all. Oops, silly us. We should have got the beholders out of the magic circle before we tried summoning again. Success. Stupid cultists. When they're gonna learn, eh?
Hello?
What can I do for you, dearie?
I can't feel my legs.